And today, we're diving into some really significant recent developments in India's defense capabilities.
Yeah, we're looking at everything from, strategic missile tests way out in the islands to some fascinating homegrown drone tech from new
Right.
startups.
So get ready. We're going to unpack what's happening and, crucially, why it actually matters.
It's quite a mix, isn't it? You've got the sort of traditional strategic power moves alongside these really modern, almost asymmetric capabilities being developed.
It really is. The sources paint a picture of a multi-pronged approach to defense modernization happening right now.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's dig in. We should probably start with the big one, the thing that literally closed the skies for a bit, this missile test.
Right. So, based on the info you shared, back on the morning of May 23rd, 2025, India went ahead and conducted a high-altitude missile test.
And the location here, that's really important, isn't it? This wasn't just some standard test range.
Absolutely not. This was over the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Just, doing anything significant defense-wise there sends a message because of the geography.
And the immediate impact was pretty clear for anyone nearby. A 3-hour airspace closure.
That's right, from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. local time, India Standard Time. And interestingly, the sources mention a similar closure was lined up for the next day too, May 24th.
A 2-day window then. So who was in charge of this? Who ran the test?
This fell under the Andaman and Nicobar Command, the ANC. It's unique because it's India's only integrated tri-services command.
Meaning Army, Navy, Air Force all together.
Exactly, all operating under one command structure in that specific region.
And why is that important, having an integrated command for this kind of thing?
Well, it signals a really unified high-priority focus on defense in that area. When you're doing complex stuff like advanced weapons trials, potentially involving air, sea, maybe ground elements, having it all coordinated under one roof is just much more efficient.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Shows how important they view the Andamans.
Definitely.
So how do they actually, enforce the no-fly zone?
They used a standard aviation procedure, issued a notice to airmen, or a NOTAM. This one went out about a week before, on May 16th.
And the details in that notice, they give us clues about the scale.
Oh, absolutely. It laid out a no-fly zone corridor, stretching up to 500 kilometers long. And the key thing, it covered all altitudes, from the ground right up.
All altitudes. That's pretty comprehensive.
It's very restrictive.
And the effect of that.
Well, the sources say it messed with 9 international flight routes. And notably, no alternatives were offered during that 3-hour block.
That level of disruption, no flexibility.
Mm.
It does suggest something pretty sensitive, maybe high security.
It really does. It underscores the likely nature of the trial.
Okay, so what did officials say? What was the official line?
They confirmed a successful test, called it a high-altitude weapons trial.
Okay.
And they framed it as sort of routine business for the Andamans, part of just keeping operationally ready. They did also mention, though, that while it happened after some recent border tensions with Pakistan, this test wasn't like a direct reaction to that.
Right, so standard readiness exercise, not specific tit for tat. But let's talk strategy. Why the Andamans? Why is that location so critical?
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting strategically. The big reason is how close it is to the Strait of Malacca.
Ah, the big shipping lane.
Exactly. Think of it as a global trade superhighway. A massive amount of the world's shipping squeezes through that choke point.
So having capability there.
It's not just about watching, it's about projecting influence, potentially gathering intelligence on all that maritime traffic moving between the Indian Ocean and the Pacific. And, push comes to shove, potentially having the means to affect that traffic.
Wow, okay. That's a powerful position.
It's a major strategic lever in the Indo-Pacific, absolutely.
And the islands themselves, they've been used for testing before.
Oh, yes. They're a key spot for India to test advanced weapons. We've seen things like the BrahMos supersonic cruise missile tested there, air-launched ballistic missiles, too, in recent years.
So if you put it all together, the huge closure, all altitudes, the vague NOTAM, the super-sensitive location, the history, it really points towards a major missile test, doesn't it?
It's highly consistent with the kind of security and procedures you'd expect for testing a strategic missile or, some other very advanced weapon system. The scale just points that way.
And connecting this specific test back to the bigger picture for India.
It just reinforces their strategic posture. It's a signal, really. A signal about maintaining credible deterrence, showing they're operationally ready, especially in the Indo-Pacific, which is, let's face it, becoming more and more important globally.
Okay, that paints a clear picture of that strategic, maybe more traditional defense angle. Now let's shift gears completely, but stay on this theme of boosting capabilities. Let's look at the cutting-edge indigenous tech. Drones, loitering munitions.
Right, and this brings us to a company called Veda Aeronautics. They're based in Delhi, a defense startup, and they're making some waves in India's domestic defense tech scene.
And one project getting attention, highlighted in the sources, is the Surashastra Mk1. It's a jet-powered loitering munition.
That's the one. And it's not just a concept. They actually landed a pretty big contract for it from the Indian Air Force, the IAF. That was back in August 2023.
A big contract. How big?
About $3 billion, which is roughly 35 million US dollar.
Okay, significant investment. And are these actually being delivered now?
Yep. Deliveries have started. The total order is for 200 of these Surashastra Mk1 units for the IAF.
All right, let's get into what it can do, the capabilities. What does this system bring to the table?
Well, it's built for versatility. Payload-wise, it can carry explosive warheads for hitting targets, obviously, but also various sensor packages for ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance.
And one of the key modern features mentioned is swarming.
Yeah, this is fascinating. It's designed so multiple drones can work together autonomously. They coordinate, share data, execute complex attacks as a coordinated group, a swarm.
Which makes them harder to defend against, presumably.
Incredibly difficult for traditional air defenses, yes.
And it doesn't need GPS.
Crucially, no. It's built to navigate and operate even if GPS signals are jammed or just not available, which is, pretty vital in modern electronic warfare.
So it can wear multiple hats on a mission.
Absolutely. Use it as a decoy, use it for a precise kamikaze strike where the drone itself is the weapon, or just use it for ISR or even a more traditional strike role with its warhead. Very flexible.
The sources mentioned it had some inspiration from elsewhere, but was really tailored for India's needs.
That's right. While they might have looked at systems like Russia's Duran-2, Veda specifically engineered the Surashastra to meet what the Indian Air Force wanted. Things like longer range, higher speed, and being expendable. That last point is key for these loitering munitions.
This really highlights that indigenous innovation angle we mentioned earlier.
It really does. This is India's first jet-powered, swarm-capable loitering munition developed entirely by a private Indian company. That's a big step for their domestic defense industry.
Why is having this kind of low-cost, expendable system considered such a force multiplier these days?
Well, think about it. They let you strike deep or hit valuable targets without risking multi-million-dollar jets and, more importantly, pilots' lives.
Right.
In today's conflicts, especially with messy borders or asymmetric threats, having a good supply of these relatively cheap, precise throwaway systems means you can go after targets you might otherwise hesitate to engage with more expensive assets.
And are there plans to make it even more adaptable, use it in other ways?
Yes, the sources suggest they're looking at future versions, maybe launched from vehicles for the Army or from ships for the Navy. That would really broaden its use across the services.
And Vita didn't just cook this up in isolation, did they? They worked closely with the Air Force.
Exactly. It was a collaborative effort. They got feedback from the IAF, refined the design. They even took part in things like the IAF's Meher Baba Swarm drone competition, which probably helped drive the development.
Can you give us a quick picture, some technical specs for the Surashastra Mk1?
Sure. It's a fixed-wing drone, V-tail design. Length is about 3.5 meters, wingspan 3 meters. Weight, fully loaded, around 90 kilograms. Range is stated as over 150 kilometers. Jet-powered, and it's launched from a catapult.
Okay, so that's the Air Force system.
Mm-hmm.
But Vita's also working on something specifically for the Army's ground troops.
Yes, another key project is a canister-launched loitering munition. This one's designed specifically to be integrated onto the Indian Army's BMP infantry fighting vehicles.
And the Army asked for this.
They did. It came out of an Army request for proposal, an RFP. It's currently in the prototyping stage.
So the idea is like a BMP rolling along could just pop one of these out.
Precisely. Launched straight from a canister on the vehicle itself. It gives those mechanized units their own immediate, mobile, precision strike power right there on the front line. No need to call in separate air or artillery for certain targets.
Let's just clarify loitering munitions again, because they have that other name people might know.
Right. They often get called kamikaze drones. Basically unmanned systems that can hang around, loiter over an area, find a target, maybe an enemy vehicle, a bunker, and then dive right into it.
And the sources mention the Indian Army has used similar things before.
Yeah, they note the Army has used loitering munitions effectively in the past, specifically mention their use against Pakistani targets during something called Operation Sindoor, so the concept's proven useful for them.
What's the big win with that canister launch system for the BMPs?
Speed and integration, you can deploy it incredibly quickly right from the vehicle that's already there. It just makes those mechanized units much more versatile, much more lethal. They get this on-demand precision strike capability baked right in.
It really sounds like Veda is quick on its feet, learning from battlefields, adapting tech to what the forces need right now.
That seems to be their MO, yeah.
Mm.
Big focus on indigenous innovation, taking lessons from modern conflicts, and using their unmanned systems know-how to meet very specific military
And
requirements.
the development for things like this BMP munition, it's properly rigorous.
Oh yeah, the prototyping involves serious R&D. They're aiming for global standards in performance and reliability.
And they're not just doing these two big drone projects. They have other things cooking.
Seems like it. Their portfolio is pretty diverse. Besides the Shastra and the BMP munition, they're reportedly working on hard-kill anti-drone systems things to shoot down other drones, plus FPV drones, the first-person view ones we've seen used a lot recently, and even underwater decoys for the Navy.
And this all fits perfectly with India's bigger picture goal for defense manufacturing.
Absolutely. It's textbook Make in India for the defense sector. Veda's focus on designing, developing, and manufacturing everything domestically is exactly what India's aiming for: less reliance on foreign tech, more self-sufficiency.
It sounds impressive, but are there roadblocks for startups like Veda in this space?
The sources do touch on a common hurdle for Indian defense startups. Making that leap from a successful prototype to actually setting up large-scale, reliable serial production and getting the systems fully adopted by the forces, that can be tricky.
Yeah, scaling up is always tough.
It is.
But despite that challenge, Veda Aeronautics definitely sounds like a company to watch in India's defense tech world.
For sure. They're working on exactly the kind of next-gen stuff the military needs to modernize.
Okay, so we've looked at two really different, but you could say connected, parts of India's defense picture today. A high-security strategic missile test way out in the Andamans, and this rapid progress in homegrown, cutting-edge drone tech from a private startup. What's the main takeaway when you see these side by side?
I think it clearly shows India is really pushing hard on enhancing defense capabilities across the board. You've got the strategic test, which is about the traditional high-level deterrence and readiness.
Hmm.
And then you have the drone work, which tackles the need for modern asymmetric warfare tools, cost-effective, advanced tech developed locally. It's like a two-track approach, strengthening conventional power projection and boosting self-reliance for the kinds of conflicts we might see more of.
So we've taken this deep dive today, looking at that strategic missile test, underscoring the Andaman's importance, and exploring how companies like Veda Aeronautics are pushing boundaries with swarm drones, kamikaze capabilities, all developed in India. Hopefully you have a clearer picture now of these advancements and, why they matter both strategically and on the ground.
It really is fascinating to see how it all links together: the strategic geography, the traditional military exercises, and the surge in cutting-edge startup innovation.
Definitely. What really stands out to you after diving into all this?
Well, here's something maybe to chew on based on what we've discussed. As countries like India get really good at developing and fielding these homegrown, relatively low-cost, expendable systems, like these swarm drones we talked about, how does that change things?
Change things how?
How does this spread of advanced but accessible strike power start to shift the whole calculation of future conflicts? Could it fundamentally alter military thinking that's traditionally been built around really expensive manned aircraft and ships?
Yeah.
That's something worth thinking about.